It's really scary when you combine fear with things that happen in our daily lives, and it's really connected to my identity. If there's a murder on a street I frequent, it's not immediately relevant to me, but it scares me anyway. If it happens in the house I live in, it scares me even more. It's already happened, so it's less likely to happen to me now. Humans feel fear because of our ability to imagine. If we didn't have the ability to imagine, there would be no reason to be afraid, to imagine that it could happen to me. In that sense, Target is definitely not a horror movie. For me, it was scarier than any horror movie I've ever seen. And I know I'm not the only one who felt that way. When the movie ended in the theater, people around me said, "That was scary." Our everyday lives are exposed to someone. That's scary enough. But what's even scarier is that the other person knows everything about you. What's even scarier is that I don't know who the other person is. They know me, and they're nibbling away at me, and I have no way of knowing who's doing it to me. My life falls apart and there's nothing I can do. I don't even know where they're watching me. It's even scarier when you think they're watching what you're doing. This is the movie that unfolds, and it starts with thrifting. In the past, you didn't know where the other person was. Now you know they're near you. It's hard to think that they can do any harm based on that. It's like an unspoken agreement between you. I'm not going to do anything to you, and you're not going to do anything to me. That's why we're seeing each other in person, and why we're seeing people running away with money, unlike in the past. I've never been anywhere near you, but I've done some second-hand trading. I'd meet them in person, pay them, get the stuff, and that was it. Most of the time, I'd go in person, and I'd find the cash in person, which you don't have to do now. Because you can just meet the person and do a wire transfer. In the movies, they still give you cash. It was a cinematic device, but it felt a little unrealistic. At the beginning of the movie, we're in downtown Seoul, and there's a lot of shouting and people putting things up for sale. One of them is selling a computer, and he's purposely looking for a woman. He tells her to come to his house because it's a computer, and the nuance is that something dangerous is going to happen. The guy who comes to the house is the woman's brother. The man is somewhat disappointed, and the guy who is the woman's brother turns around. The danger was the man who was about to unpack his things. The man's house is open to the public and all of his things are for sale. They take nice pictures and put them up for sale on second-hand sites. Among them is Soo-Yun Shin Hai-sun, who used to work in an architectural office. After moving, her washing machine breaks down and she wants to buy a new one. When she looks for a used one, she finds that someone is selling it cheaply to immigrate. She excitedly pays and receives the washing machine, but it's defective and doesn't work at all. She spent hundreds of thousands of won on it and was scammed. You go to the police to report it, but the answer is the same: the person who sold it to you has disappeared. There are so many scams like this, it takes a long time. On average, you have to wait about 3 months. I'm frustrated, but I can't help it, so I go home. I'm so frustrated that I go looking for him and I find him. He's scamming other people with the same trick. Before the transaction is finalized, you write a comment telling the buyer not to buy from him because he's a scammer. The gnome finds out and contacts Soo-Yun to tell her to stop. She's been scammed and he's threatening her. She tells him to stop being ridiculous, that she's called the police and you'll be caught. He continues to threaten her and tells her not to regret it. That's when something strange happens. A delivery comes to Soo-Yun's house that she didn't order. She gets scared and calls the police, but they still don't move. It's not like there's any direct action, but the police don't move either. This is when things really start to get scary for Soo-Yun. She's at home, where she should be most comfortable, thinking about nothing, and someone comes to her door. It's pretty unsettling, especially if you didn't invite them, and they're there for a purpose. As a woman living alone, you're very cautious. This is what happens, and you see her life fall apart. On the other hand, he's so good that it seems unrealistic. He's so good at hacking that he knows everything about Soo Yun. Honestly, it's hard to believe that he's that good at scamming her out of a small amount of money on a second-hand trading site. When he could be aiming for something much bigger, and he's good enough to hide his presence completely. Shin Hae-sun's performance as Soo Yun and the music help us imagine the tension and horror. As an added bonus, the show also touches on the issue of stalking. Soo Yun's boss at work has an almost one-sided crush on her and follows her home. It's one thing to do that once, but if he keeps coming over, it's stalking, because the other person didn't consent. The movie is pretty well constructed and the story is good. What I didn't like was the process of catching the guy at the end. It's very well hidden and the cast doesn't show it. Kim Sung-gyun, who plays the detective, is portrayed in the movie as just trying to do his job like a real detective. It's a movie where the real horror is the horror of everyday life. The music has the same timing as a horror movie, and it's a movie that keeps you on the edge of your seat for that reason.